Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting live. It's the only national radio talk show on computers to air every weeknight. Computer America. Hosted by national columnist Craig Crossman. The first hour's behind us, but there's still more of tech news, tech talk, and your phone calls. We're being beamed nationwide at ComputerAmerica.com. You got computer problems? Bring them on. You're listening to Computer America. Computers run the world, and we run computers. Call us or send us an email to live@computeramerica.com.
Hello and welcome into Hour 2 of the nation's longest-running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers. This is the Computer America Show, and I'm your host, Craig Crossman.
And I'm your co-host, Ben.
And again, a really terrific hour with our first hour with Derek Shani, our computer graphics correspondent. If you missed any portion of that, you certainly can listen again. We archive all of our shows at ComputerAmerica.com. Just click on the archive selection on the menu bar on any page at ComputerAmerica.com. In fact, anything you want to know about a show is at ComputerAmerica.com because it truly is the internet home of our radio broadcast. Okay, so we had yesterday we had Josh Boykin. We did coverage of E3, and in this hour, we're going to continue coverage of E3 with Cory Gallagher, who is an associate editor with PopZara Press and spends his days working as a journalist and technical writer and his nights working as a crime-fighting detective. Or maybe he just plays a bunch of video games and messes around with a lot of tech while subjecting the world to his opinions on it all. He's been with PopZara since the heady days, early years of 2014, and tends to stick around, meaning that the nightmare might never end. Cory is out at the Electronic Entertainment Expo, better known as E3 in LA, and reporting live with us. Cory, welcome into Computer America. How are you?
You know, they call it the Electronic Entertainment Expo. I think I call it the Electronic Exhaustion Expo. I have never been more tired in my life.
Do they have you walking immeasurable distances?
Oh, you don't even know.
Well, I mean, it's really, I would think that it's you're really in your element. I mean, this is like the best of the best. Everything about games is happening out at E3, and you're right in the middle of it. And I know Ben is very envious, would love to be out there with you. So I have to ask you, well, I mean, what's happening so far? What have you been seeing?
Well, the one game that's got everybody's attention now is the new Legend of Zelda game from Nintendo. I mean, I'm sure, Ben, you've heard about it at this point.
I have seen nothing but GIFs and videos and the trailer. People are abuzz, really.
Yeah, absolutely. The new Legend of Zelda game is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and it's taking a pretty drastic departure. Previous Zelda games were pretty linear. You'd follow the story pretty closely. You would do dungeons in order. This one looks to be an open world game, like Skyrim comes to mind. Has climbing mechanics like the classic Shadow of the Colossus. It looks like a big change to the series.
Yeah, they really have been very, very linear, and this one being open world, you get to kind of pick your own adventure. And for just some of the videos I'm seeing, it's not just an update to because this is going to be a Wii U exclusive, as well as the new Wii NX or whatever that's going to be called. Yeah, and it's not just the gameplay that got an update, but from what I've been seeing, the graphics, the engine, the physics, all this, like, that seems to be what is really driving the discussion right now, because obviously you have beta testers and the demos. The engines are really, really clean. Like right now, I'm watching a video of a player who's chopping down wood in a windy area, and it catches fire because it's going past the campfire, and then the whole valley, because the whole windy valley catches fire. Like, it's little details like that for a Zelda game are almost unheard of. Like, it's not just RPG, but it's very, very in depth as far as the technology behind it, which is good to see from Nintendo.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the complaints that Nintendo gets on a pretty consistent basis is that they have their core franchises, Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, Star Fox, and they don't tend to vary very much in those franchises. You know, if you get a Mario game, you know what it's going to be like. It's going to be a platformer. You'll probably collect things. Pokemon has you going and collecting new monsters and fighting the Elite Four at the end, and every game is like that. Zelda has you going through the game, beating dungeons in order, eventually fighting Ganondorf, and it's always been like that. With Breath of the Wild, the fact that they're going in a new direction for the Zelda series is pretty impressive, completely unprecedented. I think it's going to do a lot for Nintendo.
Do you think this could, I don't want to say, Nintendo's been in a funk, because they've definitely had a place as, whereas you'd have to spend, $300, $400, $500 on other consoles, Nintendo's kind of been behind the ball lately. And I don't know how powerful the Nintendo NX is going to be, but I can't imagine it's going to be a powerhouse. Do you think this could be something that kind of brings Nintendo back into being, I don't want to say a challenger just from one video game, but they need something to kind of pull themselves out, because I think a lot of journalists, game journalists have kind of written off Nintendo, saying they'll always stick around because, like you said, they have their core franchises, but they're not going to do well compared to Sony and Microsoft. Do you think this could kind of catch them back up?
Well, a lot of people talk about the general failure of the Wii U. I mean, this is a system that didn't do great out of the gate, continued to do pretty poorly throughout its lifespan, and at this point, we know that there's a Nintendo console coming, we just don't know much about it. So at this point, it's pretty much dead. So one of the reasons that was a problem for the Wii U is that when that system released, there wasn't really a big hard-hitting game for it. You brought out the Wii, and you had just hit after hit. You had, Wii Sports came with the console, and that was the reason most people bought Wii's, was to play Wii Sports. But it also came with a version of The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. I mean, I know that when I got my Wii, that was one of the first games I bought for it, because it's a Zelda game. These are known to be good. I mean, there have been bad Zelda games that they were on the CDI, and we mostly don't talk about them these days.
Yeah.
So the fact that we've got Breath of the Wild looking like a launch title for the NX, I mean, that's probably going to help with sales, and that's really what a console needs, is a good start, like a good solid start to get going.
Absolutely, that makes complete sense. And
now, for those of us watching the live video, what are we watching? Because
that was the scene that I was describing earlier. Is that Zelda is sitting there, chopping down some trees, and then because the valley is so windy, it blows the trees past the campfire, and because it's a campfire, the trees catch fire, and then because it's windy grassland, the whole valley becomes set on fire. And again, I remember way back in the 90s, like Zelda had little elements like that where, to melt an ice crystal, to press a button, you had to shoot through the flame and your arrow would catch fire, and then it would melt the ice, and then you could hit the button. I mean, they've always kind of had these little things, but the physics and the engine behind it, it definitely looks like, I don't want to say next generation console, but this looks like something that you really would want to experience on the Nintendo NX.
Right.
So,
Nintendo has kind of always played a different game than the other console manufacturers. While Sony and Microsoft have gone for this big, bad hardware, Nintendo's kind of stood back and said, you know what, instead of giving you this really impressive piece of kit, what we're going to do is figure out new ways for you to play our games. And with the Wii, that was incredibly successful. They came up with the idea of the Wii Remote, which kind of incorporated motion into the game and started an entire generation of motion-controlled game peripherals, like the PlayStation Move and the Kinect that we still have in the Xbox today. With the NX, what we've heard, is not much, but indications that pointed toward the NX being a console that's more on par with what Sony and Microsoft have out now, which if we see the Project Scorpio from Xbox, or rather from Microsoft, and the PS Neo from Sony, it still might be a half step behind, but that's going to put the NX in a position that's way more powerful than any previous Nintendo console, and that might make a difference.
Right, and that's something I definitely want to get into with you, which is the hardware for each of these companies. As you said, the Nintendo NX really don't know much about that. Hopefully, it's going to be current gen at least. To kind of put developers at ease that they aren't developing for a console that's already quote unquote out of date, because that's the last thing developers want to do, is make video games for a console that is seen as inferior. So hopefully that's true. And I think we're going to talk about the Project Scorpio and I've always called the PlayStation 4.5. You just called it Project or the PlayStation Neo, was it?
Neo is, I believe, the code name for the project right now, and it's what's commonly being referred to. But people also say the PlayStation 4.5 because that's basically what it is. What we're seeing right now is the start of what a lot of people are calling the iterative generation of consoles. We are in the 8th generation of consoles right now with the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, and people are saying the next consoles, the Project Scorpio and the PlayStation Neo, are essentially generation 8.5. They don't really represent a big enough step up in the hardware to really call this the end of a generation. Plus, what we've heard, rather indications have been that these new games on these new consoles will be compatible with the current consoles. So we don't really know at the moment. People will tell you yes, obviously, because obviously people aren't going to want to immediately upgrade to the Project Scorpio Xbox if they just bought an Xbox One or if they just bought the new Xbox One Slim console. Likewise, people might not want to buy the Neo if they already just bought a PS4. It's going to make people think that, oh no, I bought this hardware, it's already obsolete, how terrible. So that's causing a lot of consternation right now, actually. People are really concerned about this being an issue because one of the advantages of console gaming over PC gaming is that it tends to be less expensive. You're not paying as much for a decent console as you are for a PC, even with the same specs. Plus, I mean, this uniformity of console hardware means that you buy a game, you know it's going to work. But when we start separating consoles into PS4 and PS4.5, that generates a whole different problem. If I buy this game intended for PS4.5, what's it going to be like on PS4? Is it going to run poorly? Am I going to have a less good experience? Do I need to go out and immediately buy the 4.5? And it can go the other way too. I mean, what if I buy this game for the 4.5 and it's just about the same on the 4? And that point, why do I need the new console?
That's just real quick, Craig. That's what I kind of picked up from the Microsoft and the Xbox One when they were announcing the Xbox One S and the Xbox Project Scorpio. Is that he was very, very careful to say that any game that you purchase for the Xbox One will run on the Xbox One S and it will run on the Project Scorpio. But he never made a mention that anything that is developed for Scorpio or the One S will be backwards compatible with the current Xbox One. So
and I think here this is leading us to a situation which could be, I don't know, could not be very good. I mean, it used to be you had anywhere from an 8 to a 10-year life when you bought a console, Cory, right? I mean, you would figure it would last you 8 to 10 years. Now
Sure.
We're seeing an acceleration here, and we're seeing new models come out. Now, that's not to say, if it falls into the category of a smartphone. I mean, the smartphone, every year you want to get the newer, latest version because of new things. But, and a smartphone can be anywhere from $300 to $600, depending on what you get. So it's not that much of a difference. But it looks like the longevity or, investing in the newest technology that would ensure you a 10-year lifespan isn't going to happen anymore. Your thoughts on that?
Right. I mean, that brings up a lot of questions a lot of people have had lately. First off, you mentioned it was mentioned that they said that games are going to be backwards compatible, et cetera, but one of the things they didn't mention is whether Scorpio games were on the Xbox One. And they know that this is a question that's on people's minds, and the fact that it wasn't answered is really conspicuous. And I think that tells us the answer, which is that no, they won't.
Yeah.
Which ties into what Craig was saying, which is that we've come into the console generations expecting to get a good solid 5, 6, 7, maybe even 8 years out of our consoles. And at this point, if these new ones come out, that's going to be 2, 3, 4 years.
If that,
I mean, there's a lot. Sorry.
If that, I mean, that we might start seeing the acceleration of new consoles coming out at a more and more rapid rate.
All of this virtual reality that a lot of these companies are showing off, I mean, they're, and I don't want to say virtual reality is going to be running at the minimum specs on consoles, but I think consoles are going to be really racing ahead and seeing how far they can push the envelope when virtual reality comes out. So I think virtual reality is going to we're going to start seeing 2-year consoles because of virtual reality, and you just need the added hardware.
Or maybe they'll have some sort of modular system where you buy a console and then in 2 years you can buy a plug-in module that that'll give it more life or something. So you don't have
Xbox Power Pack.
Yeah, power
Yeah,
pack.
maybe.
Sorry, yeah, exactly. I mean, it might come to that, I mean, because look, what are you seeing? Are you seeing a lot of virtual reality out at the E3?
Virtual reality is very big at E3 right now. But that's the thing. Virtual reality debuted this year and to some extent last year. And as we've seen, I mean, it's not really been big with consumers. There was a massive issue of sticker shock when the Oculus Rift announced its price. The same thing has happened with the HTC Vive, and these are the two main VR platforms. I mean, along with that, we've also seen Oculus basically, to some degree, attempting to segregate the different forms of VR with games that only work on the Oculus. And these aren't good signs. I mean, these don't inspire confidence in consumers. And without that confidence, it's going to be difficult to launch with essentially a new platform for gaming. So, what you see at E3 and what eventually comes out and becomes popular are two entirely different things. Last year it was also VR, but still you can't walk into a store and buy a headset.
Yeah, that availability is definitely a problem because I think a lot of these bigger companies are afraid to say, all right, there's going to be a demand, so we're going to need 10,000 units on our shelves at Best Buy, and yet no one wants to make that huge initial investment because if it's a flop, that's going to really hurt. So now you kind of have to pre-order them or just order them, and then they're on like 3-week back order. Yeah, the adoption rate is definitely slowing on both ends, from consumers and from companies having the availability of the unit. So not good.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, that kind of thing it's a big indicator. I mean, people like you and Craig and I and all the beautiful, attractive listeners of Computer America, I mean, we're one demographic. We're the people who care enough about these things to listen to a radio show about tech or to go to an expo about tech or to read about tech. But what really comes down to it, I mean, the most significant portion of consumers are the ones who don't listen to radio about tech or go to shows or whatever. They're the ones who walk into a store, they see their headset for $200-$300, and they realize, they think to themselves, you know what? I just got my tax return. I can afford this. I have a little bit extra money. I can afford this. And if it costs $600-$700 or you can't find it in stores or both, that's not a good sign. That's not going to get you anywhere.
Right. And so, and Cory, I hate to do this to you, but we have like 40 minutes left. It's going to be a really, really tight hour. So I think we should start, kind of from the beginning. When you first got there at E3, and let's kind of pick this up with video games, because we're going to hit on hardware as we go along. When we hit Microsoft, we're going to talk about hardware, and as we hit PlayStation and Sony, we're going to talk about hardware. But when you first got in, I don't know when you officially landed, but hearing from Josh Boykin, it sounded like there was like day 0 and day -1, which had like Bethesda and EA Play. Did you attend any of these?
Typically, I don't actually attend the conferences themselves. It's a big mess getting in, and really, you're not really getting much from being there that you wouldn't get from just watching a stream. So that's typically what I do. What I've seen Bethesda, I've seen EA, I've seen Sony, I've seen Microsoft. I can talk a little bit about the games that really got my eye there, if you'd like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure. So I think we'll start with EA. How about that one?
Okay. So EA's biggest thing for me, this might be a little bit strange. I really liked Titanfall 2.
Why is that strange? Why do you say it's strange? It's supposed to be one of the big anticipation of games. Yeah, go ahead.
It's a very anticipated game, sure, but people might remember Titanfall 1 as, excuse the term, it was a bit of a wet fart. It got a lot of attention, it got a lot of hype, but when it came down to it, it made a little bit of noise and made you feel kind of gross, and not a lot of people bought it. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy Titanfall a lot. I thought it was a great game. I thought it was a pretty well-tweaked shooter. I think it incorporated some degree of multiplayer online battle arena elements that a lot of shooters had. It did a lot of cool and interesting new things. But there were some missteps with it. For instance, the lack of a real single-player campaign was one of them. the lack of content when the game launched was another one. And it looks like to me, EA is kind of taking these into account with Titanfall 2, and that's really exciting.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's something that I saw with not with Titanfall. I didn't get a chance to play that, but I did pick up Destiny from Bungie, and the immediate release of Destiny was a mess. It was all over the road. I came in with the first expansion, which was the Fallen King, the Taken King, one of those. And they cleaned up a lot of their mistakes. Not many companies hit it out of the park the first time around, and subsequent
Right.
patches and expansions really do seem to clean up a lot of the mess that the first one made.
Sure. And I mean, not to get off into a tangent about Destiny, but you said that a company doesn't tend to get things right the first time around. Let's not forget that Bungie was directly involved with Halo, which was a hit the first time around.
That's fair. That's fair.
Being a little bit of a flop at first. Destiny being a bit of a flop at first was kind of egregious, but you're correct. I would say the Taken King brought it up from a C to at least a B+. Getting back to EA, though, another couple of things really got my eye. There's a new Mass Effect series, Mass Effect Andromeda. And, we haven't seen Mass Effect since Mass Effect 3 came out, and I'm sure all of us who play games remember the big fiasco with the ending there, and we all kind of thought, this is the end of that series. We're not going to see any more. It ended on a really sour note. People weren't happy with it, and now Mass Effect is over. That's terrible. But that's not the case. We've got Mass Effect Andromeda. It's looking really good, and it's also doing something that I've seen a lot of companies doing lately, which is this big rush to make space games. I mean, you walk around E3, space. I saw a game from Daily Entertainment called Long Journey Home. That's a space game. Lots of space-related VR games. So you've got Mass Effect Andromeda. You've got, we'll talk about probably later, Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. This just big push for space games, and I think it's based on two things. I think one of them is the new Star Wars film getting a lot of attention. And I think the other one is the real big success of the crowdfunded project Star Citizen, which made over $110 million. I mean, the industry pays attention to these things. It knows where the money is. It gravitates toward it. And right now the money is up in the sky, out of orbit.
Yeah, it could be a couple things for me. It seems like the industry may be a little bit burned out on fantasy. I mean, The Witcher, Skyrim, there are a couple others. Like, they really hit it out of the park for like the medieval fantasy, kind of genre. The space one, like you said, Star Citizen, hasn't really, there haven't really been too many out of the park. But all right, so there's a mass migration into orbit. There, something to be said for that.
Right.
All right, so
and also showed off some Star Wars. We know that they do Star Wars, and we saw Battlefront last year, which I thought was pretty good. A lot of people had a lot of issues with it. They said it was low on content yet again, much like Titanfall. I thought it was a pretty good game, and I think more attention paid to Star Wars related games and the whole franchise is going to be a good thing. I think Star Wars is big right now. I think it's going to stay big. I think it's going to be a real good cash cow for EA.
Really?
I've heard some mixed things about Star Wars Battlefront, the newest one that just came out, and that it had a really good adoption rate. I mean, people picked it up in droves, but then they also left it in droves after. I think like they didn't really come out with the true rank system, which keeps a lot of people interested, and the storyline was good, but it was actually pretty short. So I heard that there were good initial sales, but then there was no content, there was no one continuing to play after the initial 30, 40 hours.
Right. We're in we're in a kind of a point in the industry right now where these games as a service sort of things are really popular. I mean, we've got Battlefront, which it's multiplayer. You will play Battlefront multiplayer or you will not play it. And that's a great idea in theory, but the issue with that is that without this single player content, without any reason to keep you playing once you've seen all the maps, once you've played all the modes, the game's going to die off, and that's eventually going to cost you sales in the end. I mean, you might have saved money not making a big, long single-player campaign, but after the first couple of months when people stop buying your game because there's nothing to do in it, that's going to be an issue.
Right. All right, so Mass Effect Andromeda, we're going to see yet another return to Mass Effect because, like you said, 3 left us with a bit of a cliffhanger. I believe they like patched in a DLC with a better ending, so they were like, "Oh no, we got this, folks," and they kind of threw us a bone. But it's good to see that we're getting another Mass Effect Andromeda, because I know a lot of people who are really invested in that. So EA, did any of the sport games really kind of innovate? Because I know it's like a yearly thing. You can expect it. There's like NBA, Madden, FIFA. Like, did any of the sports games really jump out at you?
Here's the thing with sports games. I mean, they're sports. So you talk about innovation, you're not really going to tend to see it with sports games. So what sports games do that people might not consider, it's important not just for people who play sports games, but for the industry as a whole. If you want to see graphical innovation, if you want to see video games looking the best they can possibly look, you want to look at sports games. You don't need to take football and create this new innovative RPG system for football. It's going to be football. You know what it's going to be like. There are rules set in stone. It's going to be a football game. So you can refocus your money and your effort toward making this football game look as good as possible. And you will not see graphics in video games, especially console games, better than what's in the latest Madden, for instance. And that's a big thing, because that sort of thing spreads to other games and other genres.
In other words, I mean, the big thing in the sports games is the video realism. I mean, trying to make it look
Exactly.
you're looking at real people doing real things, even though it's all computer graphics. And I've noticed that over the years, it gets to the point now where you're looking at it, and if you look at it, at first you're going, are those real people, or is it? Sometimes you just quite can't tell, or it's getting so close. And it's just getting better and better. So and because they don't have to develop other worlds and other things, it's just in a simple, I mean, the standard environment. And as you say, there are certain rules that you stay by, because it's a sporting game. They can put all the dollars into making it looking as realistic as possible, and what makes perfect sense. And what happens when they finally get to the point where it's just like watching a game, and you can't tell anymore? Maybe
then we fire the NFL and we just play video games.
Yeah, just have video games. You can't tell the difference. Why spend millions of dollars on a player?
Right.
When you can just do it with CG.
Right.
Right. So and in this last 2 minutes, I really want to wrap up EA. Anything else that you saw from the EA press conference that people should be looking out for?
Battlefield 1 is a game that's on everybody's mind right now. If you play games, chances are you've tried Battlefield or in some form or another since 1942 or any of those. And it's one of those games that really symbolizes multiplayer shooters. And now we're going back to World War I with Battlefield 1, which is fascinating to me. A few years ago, maybe a couple console generations ago, we had this big focus on World War II-based shooters. And for a while there, people got sick of them. Oh, no more World War II, et cetera, et cetera. It's interesting to see a World War I-based shooter. We don't have many of those. I can't think of many, to be honest. And just taking the setting by itself does a lot. But the fact that it's going to be a Battlefield game, it's got the full support of EA and DICE behind it, that's a big deal. I mean, even if you're not a big fan of this kind of military shooter, might still be worth keeping on your radar, just because it's going to be one of those games that really shows what AAA games are all about, which is spectacle. It's going to look great, pretty good shot, it's going to play great, and it's going to take things in a direction we haven't seen in a long time. That's worth looking at.
Right, and this is as we said with Josh yesterday, that it's a deviation from the general. It's like, well, you get a Call of Duty and you get a parallel of Battlefield, and they've been in futuristic, kind of first-person shooters, and this is the first deviation where we've seen, Call of Duty throw the gloves off. They're like, okay, we're going infinite warfare, and we are going with spaceships, and we are going low Earth orbit, and then out comes Battlefield 1, which is, we're going even more primitive than World War II, which is what you all want. We're going World War I on you folks, and so we're seeing that
Right.
split, and honestly, gamers seem very receptive to Battlefield 1.
Right, they do. I think what gamers are big on right now is you want kind of a shift away from the modern warfare setting. That was, as I mentioned, we had World War II for a while. Then we had Modern Warfare for a while, thanks to the success of course, Call of Duty Modern Warfare. That produced multiple Modern Warfare games. It produced the Black Ops titles. It produced Battlefield. It produced Battlefield Hardline. And now people are saying, you know what? If we're going to keep playing these games, you have to shake it up a little bit.
Hey,
so that's
Cory.
resulted in Call of Duty.
Yeah.
Right?
Hey, all right, Cory, we're going to take a little break, and we're going to be right back. You're listening to the Computer America Show. We're talking to Cory Gallagher. He is a Computer America gamer correspondent with PopZera. He's out at the E3 convention. We'll continue on with them right after this. Please stay with us. Hi, this is Craig Crossman, host of the Computer America Show. You have important meetings to schedule. Your company's getting ready for its IPO, and you're in charge of the PTA fundraiser this month. So how do you coordinate everyone to be available at the same time? Are you still using emails, phone calls, even text messages to schedule meetings with a group of people? How's that working out for you? Not so great, huh? It's a fact that every day, millions of people suffer from scheduling headaches. Well, with Doodle, scheduling meetings with a group of people is quick and easy. With Doodle, you can easily propose available times to each member. Each one checks off the times that they're available, and then you simply pick the time that works best for the group, all in an easy-to-read display that integrates with your existing calendar. Nothing could be more simple. Give Doodle a try for free, and like millions of Doodle users, you'll truly see how easy it is to find the perfect date and time for all your meetings. That's www.doodle.com. Looking for a best friend? Brother Wolf Animal Rescue has your best friend waiting just for you. The mission of Brother Wolf Animal Rescue is to help build a sustainable, no-kill community where no dogs or cats are ever killed for population control, where true euthanasia is reserved only for animals who are irremediably suffering or for animals who are truly a threat to society and with no hope of rehabilitation. Brother Wolf staff and volunteers go door to door, neighborhood by neighborhood, to educate citizens about local resources available for at-risk pets and to help their families connect with those resources. Brother Wolf's community-based approach to no-kill helps keep family pets healthy, happy, and in their homes and out of the local shelter system in the first place. For more information or to make a tax-deductible donation to this wonderful 501c3 organization, visit their website at www.bwar.org. Help to realize Brother Wolf's vision when no animal is euthanized for lack of a home.
Who's a good boy?
Ew, sorry, robot vacuum still can't dodge droppings. Hi, Marty Winston with a News Tips Bulletin Review for Computer America. This time, the MyPhaser X10. It's the size and shape of a smartphone, and a front print that looks like a handset screen helps sell its masquerade. But the X10 MyPhaser is something else entirely. With its arming switch off, it's a modest LED flashlight. Yawn. Flick that switch on, and it's a high-voltage stun gizmo that, when skillfully used, can disorient or disable an assailant. Hey, don't you dare use it on anybody who isn't. We note a higher word count in the warnings and disclaimers than in the instructions, as there should be, because this thing delivers a big kick. Bottom line, MyPhaser may look like a phone in your hand, but it leaves bad guys wishing for a soft place to land. Marty Winston with a News Tips Bulletin Review for Computer America.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show here in the second hour. We are finishing out with Mr. Cory Gallagher, and yeah, we're doing all things E3 and E3 related. And yeah, Cory, unless you have any kind of closing statement for E3, for EA, yeah, we have about 6 more studios to go.
Well, something needs to be said about the fact that EA itself wasn't necessarily on the E3 show floor. They actually had their own separate function called EA Play.
How do you think that's going to affect E3 in the future? Because obviously E3 makes its profit from these companies who buy out lots and lots of floor space, and EA is one of the biggest, game developing companies out there. How do you think it's going to affect the future of E3 if these companies would rather host their own events rather than paying, for this huge convention?
I mean, without spiraling off into a long discussion about how the nature of video game marketing is changing, we've come to accept, for instance, that video game magazines aren't really a thing anymore. Instead, we get most of our news from not even online sources, really. Mostly YouTube is one thing. Twitch.tv is one thing. We get our information about games from influencers, basically people who play games, people who want you to watch them playing games, people who get the same kind of consideration now that the press used to back in the day. So with that, E3 itself kind of loses a little bit of impact, because do we really need a big show to showcase all of our upcoming games? We could just like give press builds to these influencers, have them show it off in their own money and their own time. I mean, that's a massive savings for marketing budget. That's a huge, if the biggest chunk of a game's development is spent on marketing, then imagine what that can do for overall game budget.
Yeah, I said that to Josh Boykin. I said, then we might find ourselves not going to these conventions anymore. It's all the internet. Maybe we'll just go to the virtual versions of these things. Put on our VR headsets and go virtually. Not having to leave our homes.
Entirely possible.
Yeah, exactly.
That would. Well, I guess the biggest market for VR is officially journalists. That's cool. All right, so EA, good. They had a lot of good showing, so we'll leave them a little bit in the past. Let's move on to, how about Bethesda? Did anything from Bethesda tickle your fancy?
So here's the most interesting thing to me from Bethesda, and again, I'm not really sure it's going to be the same thing everybody else liked. I was a huge fan of the reveal of Prey, which, if you never played Prey, it basically did the entire Portal concept before Portal did it. It was an FPS that played with physics. It played with the idea of space being one continual idea. You would walk through one door, come out a different door 50,000 feet away, or you'd see yourself walking through a different door. It's difficult to explain. It fooled around with physics. It was really cool. And now here we have Prey, not Prey 2, as it turns out, which is a game that was teased for years and never actually went anywhere. Saw a really great teaser for that. It makes it look like this wonderful horror game. I don't know. I'm pretty excited for that. I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, that's one that I unfortunately didn't catch. But I mean, it seems like these. Another theme that a lot of these developers seem to be preying on is, of course, nostalgia. I mean, we're going to talk a little bit later about, I'm sure, the Crash Bandicoot, kind of reemergence. So it's not unheard of to hear, to see these big companies go way back in their archives and say, what did work and what can we make work again? So I guess there's a Prey 2006 version, and upcoming is a Prey 2017 video game. So I guess look forward to that.
Right. It's looking really good to me. Other things that Bethesda did, I'm sure we're all aware of the sequel to Dishonored, Dishonored 2. Mm-hmm. Dishonored 1, I don't feel like it got a lot of hype when it came out. It's this stealth-based action / RPG / tactical infiltration simulator that just kind of came out of nowhere a few years ago and made a big splash. People really like Dishonored. Here we have Dishonored 2, which every indication is that it's going to be amazing. I mean, one of the biggest things is that they took ideas from people who played Dishonored 1, the different tricks they did to clear levels, the combinations of the magic powers you had in that game, and made those into actual game mechanics in Dishonored 2. It's looking really cool. And the fact that it's getting the kind of hype that Dishonored 1 didn't says that Bethesda's confident in it as well.
Yeah, the Dishonored 1, that was a lot of fun for me. I know a lot of people gave it high praise because it was kind of choose your own adventure. You get a different ending depending on if you killed a bunch of people or if you stealth your way through and didn't kill anyone. You get two different kind of endings. I enjoyed hacking my way through the game, a lot of fun. But Dishonored 2, they're taking the original game mechanics, and they didn't want to one-to-one, kind of say, okay, you kind of have this power to blink, teleport, whatever you want to call it. And in Dishonored 2, they're giving you a similar one, but it's its own spin. So it's not just a remake of the first one. It's, kind of an innovation on the first one. So that was good to see. Bethesda, Fallout 4 VR. What are your feelings?
Now, I myself, I'm not the biggest proponent of VR. It's not something that I'm really capable of using. I have some weirdness going on with my eyes, so I'm not a huge fan of it. But actually, my colleague Grayson Hamilton went today to experience Fallout 4 in VR, and he says that after a little bit of time getting used to it, that it's amazing. I mean, it's like second nature. You'll get used to aiming, you get used to moving around. He said the biggest issue with Fallout 4 in VR is that you move very fast compared to most VR-based games where you're slowed down to keep you from getting sick.
Okay. Yeah, that is, I'm sure one of many, many, many we're going to see in the coming years, which is taking these games that were successful and giving them a version of VR. So, it's Fallout 4 today, Skyrim tomorrow, Elder Scrolls Online the next day. I mean, there's going to be these ports to VR because it's, just makes sense. If it worked for some people, it's going to work again, maybe.
Well, it's interesting with Fallout 4 because this is the first kind of mainstream game that's doing this. And as we talked about earlier in the show, VR doesn't really have much of an install base just yet. I mean, Bethesda is taking a risk porting this game over like this because let's say you bring out Fallout 4 VR and nobody does anything with it. Nobody wants it because they don't have a headset, because they don't like VR, because headsets are too expensive, because you can't find one. There are a lot of things that could potentially go wrong. So they're taking a risk here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Bethesda, if you have nothing else to say, they came out with a lot of great games. They really showed off that, hey, we have some good stuff on the horizon, and I think Bethesda did really, really nice. But other studios. So unless anything else for Bethesda, I say we move on to Microsoft.
Absolutely. I mean, one last thing needs to be said for Bethesda. They are working apparently on a remaster of Skyrim. Everybody's excited for that. We don't really need to say any more about that.
Right. Yeah. The remake of Skyrim is going to be a godsend for a lot of people who could not play it on their newest consoles. So that's going to be nice. So Microsoft, I say before we get into the software, we should really kick into just what did Microsoft release as far as hardware goes, because they did come out with 2 new consoles, and that's going to kind of raise alarm bells for a lot of people.
Right. Now, Microsoft did something that I find a little bit strange, which is, as you said, they announced 2 different pieces of new hardware. The first one is the Xbox One S, which is basically a slim version of the Xbox One, along the lines of what we saw happen to the PS2 and the PS3. It's a smaller system. It runs 4K HD video. It is basically an excuse for you to buy another Xbox One if you already have one, because it looks really nice. Got a fancy looking controller. With it. It's white accents, a grip in the back, and it looks solid. But here's the thing. You're going to announce the smaller console. People are going to buy it. And then we've also announced this Project Scorpio thing, which is apparently the actual next step for Xbox, which, as we talked about earlier, is the Xbox 1.5, essentially. It's an Xbox intended to play games in 4K, which we got to note is different from 4K HD video. Play games in 4K and run VR. So this brings up a big question. It's like Microsoft is basically cannibalizing themselves. They're saying to consumers, look, you bought the Xbox One, here's a better Xbox One. Sorry. Or you bought the better Xbox One, well, later we're going to have this fancy Xbox One that runs games in 4K. It runs VR games. How do you feel now about having bought the fancy new Xbox One? I don't really understand their motivations here, to be honest.
Yeah, that is what led Craig to continuously ask, is there going to be some kind of upgrade path? Because I'm sure a lot of people are hoping that that's the case, even though we know as gamers that's not going to happen. But a lot of people are hoping that I already bought into your ecosystem that I thought was, kind of going to be set in place for a couple of years. I was going to get my money's worth. And now you're telling me that, well, in about a year, we're going to have something that has true 4K gaming and true virtual reality that we can play on it. But, anything we buy in the past couple of years and anything we buy for the next year until that comes out is going to be outdated as soon as it does. And that's a hard pill to swallow for people who are looking to buy something.
Right. And here's the thing about the video game industry, and I don't want to sound too cynical, but it has to be said. One of the defining features of the game industry is the fact that it's constantly testing its limits to see what consumers will put up with. If you remember back in the day with Bethesda releasing the Elder Scrolls Oblivion, that had horse armor in it. People were up in arms about that. But today, it's unthinkable that a AAA game would release without DLC content. Or back in the day, online passes. If you bought a used game, there's a good chance you couldn't play online unless you paid a little bit extra because you bought a used game. You were being punished for buying a used game. People said they wouldn't stand for that, and yet they did. So here we have this iterative console idea, which is you bought a console 2 years later, here's a better console, you should probably upgrade. And people are up in arms about that, but history has shown us that I hate to say it, gamers getting up in arms about something doesn't mean they won't buy it.
That's very, very true. So Xbox One will definitely wait. We'll definitely see what happens on the hardware side, but on the software side, we're going to talk a little bit about it. But I really want to get to the PlayStation because this is what we heard from Josh Boykin was that that PlayStation and Sony trounced, and I'm going to use the word trounced Microsoft. So Microsoft software-wise, a new Gears of War, a new Forza, all of the traditional console pushers, a new Dead Rising that looked very good, and then things like Scalebound and Tekken. Did any of these kind of grab you?
Well, here's the thing with this. A lot of these games were games that we already knew existed, even as of last year. I mean, we first saw Gears of War 4 last year, and back then it was new and it was exciting and it was sexy, but seeing it again for a second year just tells me, hey, it's not out yet. We're not done yet. That doesn't impress me. Scalebound. We've known about Scalebound for years now. Seeing a trailer yet again doesn't impress me at this point. So I think that in the end, Microsoft's conference is focused so much on the hardware precisely because Sony didn't introduce any. We know they have some coming, but that's not the direction they took, and Microsoft there saw an opening.
Right. Yeah. So that's it. Scalebound, I wasn't really impressed. I think the combat was really, really slow. The multiplayer aspect didn't really grab me. It looked like a very convoluted Final Fantasy fight. So, I mean, that really didn't grab me. The only thing I will say is that Dead Rising 4, that did kind of hype me up a bit. That looked like a return of the original character, and it looked like a good, just shoot 'em up zombie feel good game.
Absolutely. I mean, we're all excited to see more of Frank West because he's covered wars,
Yeah, right. All right. So, and again, sorry for listeners out there that feel this is very rushed. It's because it is. There is a lot going out there at E3, and there will be more even after this. But so Microsoft, any final words from any software before we move on to Ubisoft?
I'm going to agree with you on Dead Rising 4 being the thing that I was most excited for, the game that was new, that really got my attention, as opposed to, here, this game still isn't out, but please stay excited for it.
Absolutely. So, all right. So, Ubisoft, they are a game developer, much in the same vein as Bethesda, and they have their own, kind of core franchises that I think a lot of people were looking forward to. I'm just going to run through a few of these here real quick and see which ones stood out to you. But we have things like Watch Dogs 2. We have things like Star Trek Bridge Crew, The Division, which is the DLC Underground, South Park, new South Park. A lot of people were very excited to see a new South Park. Who knew, of all things? And, of course, a new Tom Clancy.
Sure. Ubisoft in recent years has become kind of the publisher that everybody loves to hate. I mean, you go into any gaming-related forum and talk to people who are really into games, they'll tell you they can't stand Ubisoft because they keep making the same games over and over again, which is interesting because this year, for instance, we didn't see a new Assassin's Creed. That was pretty much a yearly franchise. We saw 3, 4, Black Flag, Unity, Rogue, all released in a relatively short span of time. And it looks like they're taking a break from the franchise for a bit, maybe to focus on the movie, which is interesting to me. But as far as what they actually did talk about, Tom Clancy Wildlands looks good to me. We knew about it already. It's not new, but it looks like a good game. The Division, the expansion is interesting, especially because indication has been that the Division has had some issues lately. It's had issues with hackers, with cheaters, and the fact that they're still going all in with that sounds good to me. Ubisoft For Honor looks good to me. I mean, again, a game we knew about, but a solid-looking game, a medieval combat title, new IP, which kind of does something for the haters who said Ubisoft does the same thing over and over again. We have this new IP, this interesting-looking take on medieval multiplayer combat, which that seems pretty exciting.
Cory, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I got to ask you this, because I didn't get the chance to ask Josh of it. You obviously experienced gamer.
Sure.
You follow all the stuff. You do this professionally. It's just wonderful. You're out at E3. Were there any surprises? Did you see something that you didn't expect, or out at E3, or is it too early there, or do you anything catch your eye that you didn't kind of hit you from left field?
It's interesting. I was talking to my colleagues about this exact same thing, and we have Grayson, who this is his first year. Everything is new and fancy and bright to him, and he is really, really excited, and everything is sunshine and rainbows. And then we have Herman and I, who are grizzled veterans at this point. I mean, I've been for 2 whole years now.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, compared to last year, there really aren't that many surprises. I mean, we had showstoppers, literal showstoppers last year, like the reveal of the Final Fantasy VII remake. I mean, that was something people have wanted for the better part of a decade now.
Mm-hmm.
And boom, there it is. It's in your face. We haven't seen anything like that. The closest thing we have is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which, I mean, sure, it's really cool, and I'd love to play it, but it's not a Final Fantasy VII remake. So, and I mean, I don't want to say it's more of a routine show than usual, but I have to admit, being on the floor, it's kind of how it feels to me. It feels like we're seeing a lot of sequels. It feels like we're seeing a lot of games that do the same thing other games have done. I think right now everybody's playing it safe, and I think to some degree it might involve the growth of VR. I mean, maybe the companies don't want to invest too much in traditional games because who knows, VR could take off at some point, and then everybody's playing VR games, and we're releasing non-VR games. What a disaster that would be.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, there's also the pitfall that like with 3D TVs, that was going to be the next big thing, and look what happened. It fizzled. I don't know this league.
People get excited about VR, and people get excited about VR. Just tell them, remember what happened with the Virtual Boy.
So I mean, it may fizzle. Maybe hardware and software technology isn't there yet. For this, it's like 3D TV. It's maybe.
I mean, it definitely wasn't there in the 90s when it first tried to catch on. I think VR's come a long way, and and again, I've tried the HTC Vive. If you put it on your face, you're gonna like it. Of course, any extenuating eye problems, kind of excluded.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of people, if they go out there and they try it, it's something that people haven't really done before, and it really does give you a next level immersion.
But
that's something that I think people like. It's just the sticker shock. Who can afford $1,600 worth of hardware just to play a $40 game? Not many people.
And how do we know it's going to last? I mean, it might be fun, for the first time it's going to be new, novel, and different for, a little while, but then it's going to fade off, and then, I want to go back to my, my 4K monitors or something, because,
right.
That's what worries me. Cory?
Right. Absolutely. And, on the same level, again, we talk about paying a lot and experiencing the sticker shock to get a VR headset. And that's one thing. The other thing is that so far, there really haven't been any real killer app games for VR. Nothing has made me, perk my ears up and say, look, I really need to go out there and shell out this ungodly amount of money to get a VR headset because I just have to play this game. And that's what moves hardware. I mean, that's what sells consoles. That's part of what caused the Wii U to fail. It didn't release with Zelda. It didn't release with the big fancy new Mario game. It didn't release with a new Pokemon. It was just there. There was nothing you had to have it for. Contrast with the Wii, which had Zelda, which had Wii Sports. Contrast with the Xbox 360, which had Gears of War, which was it redefined the third-person shooter. So for VR to really take off, we need that kind of killer app, and we're only just now seeing companies, even take their tiniest little steps into that particular pool with Fallout 4 VR, for instance.
Yeah, in other words, you're right. I think because there's no game that you can play with VR that you can't play that same game on a flat screen. I mean, there's nothing that says there's nothing there that requires you to have VR. This can only play with VR in the VR mode. I mean that.
Well, they have a few games like that, but they aren't, console pushers. There's some good games in the horror genre. There's some good first-person shooter games, but there's nothing that says, just like Cory was saying, there's nothing that says I need a VR headset for that game. There hasn't been that yet.
Yeah. Do you think there will be, Cory?
It's really hard to say. I think we're in kind of a catch-22 right now. We want to sell these fancy new, very expensive headsets to people because that's going to make us a lot of money. at the same time, we don't want to spend a lot of money making games for our fancy new expensive headsets because people aren't buying them. You have to do one or the other. And if neither of those happen, VR itself is going to die a slow and painful death, just like what happened with those 3D TVs everybody was supposed to want.
Yeah, that's the big worry.
Oh, the poor 3D TV just doesn't.
Yeah, I haven't seen the killer app yet for VR. I mean, maybe it's out there, maybe it's waiting in the wings, but right now, it's just an enhancement of 2D. I mean, there's not one game that you can really play in VR that you really can't play on a flat screen.
Well, let me
Right.
stop there.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want, Craig keeps saying that, and before it gets stuck in his head and he says it 1,000 and says it 1,000 times again, there are tons of games that are only VR compatible, but none of them are really worth the initial price drop of the console. So, like, there are games that you can play on one or the other, but right now VR is looking really lackluster in its lineup of games.
What about AR? Is there any AR going on out there? Cory?
I have not seen anything related to augmented reality. In fact, that entire concept seems to have been kind of supplanted by virtual reality. The only big augmented reality game that's really gotten on the radar lately is Pokemon Go from Nintendo and Niantic, which great idea, really excited for it. But that's it. I think AR has just kind of fallen by the wayside.
What about Minecraft? Didn't they have an AR version of that coming out?
They did. They talked about it a little bit last year, but that kind of, again, fell by the wayside in favor of, again, these headsets, which are very pricey and very distinctive. And if you have one, people will know you have one, so we better start selling them soon.
Yeah. Well, all right. So we got about 2 minutes left. Cory, anything else you want to mention about E3? Other than the fact that you become very jaded about the whole thing.
Apparently, I'm not the only one. Don't get me wrong. It's a great show. Video gaming is still a great hobby. Don't listen to the old jaded men like me who say otherwise. Like I said, we're seeing a lot of VR this year, and it's entirely possible, given the exodus from E3, that the show is going to become smaller. It's going to change in some way. So enjoy E3 in its current form while you can, because next year, who knows? It might just be like a fan run or a event that allows fans in. You never know. Yeah,
exactly. Wow. Well, okay. Now E3 goes on.
I can't tell you how happy that makes me that I wanted to, but I was unable to make it out to E3 this year, and that you're telling me next year it's probably going to be a shadow of its former self. That it warms the cockles.
Sunshine and rainbows.
Well, Cory, listen, Ben and I want to thank you for being with us here tonight and kind of giving us a wrap up of E3. Of course, we'll be talking more about it as the time on our Gamer Tuesdays with Josh Boykin. We'd love to have you back on the show as well. When you get back, we'll do a Gamer Tuesday with you as well. In the meantime, enjoy
Sounds
E3.
Great.
Yeah, enjoy E3 out there, and have a good time. And we'll catch you soon. Okay.
Great. Thanks very much. And remember, guys, check popzara.com for all your E3 coverage. It's going to be wonderful because I'll have wrote most of it.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Thanks again, Cory. Have a good day. Take care. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right. There he goes. Cory Gallagher again with PopZara and out at E3. And hopefully you enjoyed that. Now, coming up on tomorrow's show, we're going to have...
it's going to be Thursday.
Yeah, Marcel Gagne. It's going to be our all Linux show. Monsieur Gagne is going to be joining us. He is just a fun guy, Marcel, and
all about Linux, and he's very, very in tune with the Linux community, and of course
90 seconds.
Yes.
And of course, he always comes up with new distributions and Linux news. So if you're all about Linux, this is the show for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So he'll be joining us tomorrow. And again, don't forget on Friday, we're going to be giving away that Logitech M535 Bluetooth wireless mouse to some lucky winner. Head over to computeramerica.com and get yourself registered. It's so easy. I just go on the Interact pull-down menu and frequent all the different places that Computer America interacts with, all the social media, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Pinterest. They're all there. And each one acts as an entry. It's just that simple, and then you'll have that many. You can have the 5 entries every single week, and you only have to do it one time. and you might be a winner of that Logitech M535 Bluetooth wireless mouse valued at $40. So that about wraps it up. Hey, thank you all so much for being here with us. And Ben and I will see you tomorrow. Same time, same place, same station. So until tomorrow afternoon, this is Craig Crossman hoping that your hard disk never becomes floppy. We'll see you tomorrow.
Have a good one, everyone.
Bye-bye. Woohoo! Yeah, that too.
10 seconds. Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
Okay, everybody, thanks for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Bye everyone.